want encompassed in one area. I think that's perhaps one way to describe it. But let's not waste any time, and let's jump straight into the interview now with the Minister of Tourism here in South Africa, Marthinus van Schalkwyk. It's so good to see you again, and welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Leanne. Yeah. Thank you very much. Isn't it just wonderful to be able to wake up here every morning?
Oh. I was actually just chatting to, I don't know where he is, but to the photographer that lives here in the area, and he was explaining to me about the different mountain ranges, and this is what he does for a living, take pictures and live here. Can you imagine that?
Yes, and what is so impressive is that this community actually decided to make use of this.
Yeah.
And so this is creating jobs for the local people, and that is actually what we want. We want local people to understand what they have, to turn that into concrete, tangible products. And this is what this community did. They were very creative. They decided they're going to use it to create jobs, to ensure local economic growth, and they're succeeding.
Yeah, they certainly are. Minister, let's look back. I mean, this year is a massive year for South Africa. We've got elections coming up in a month or so. We've also got 20 years of democracy that's being celebrated in South Africa. And, I mean, to think that 20 years ago, the world missed out on all of this because of the circumstances we lived on. How far have we come when it comes to tourism?
It's a very important year. We are celebrating 20 years of democracy and freedom, and in 94 we only had just over 3 million international arrivals in our country. Last year we had just over 13 million. Almost 10 million of them were tourists. So tourism is certainly a success story of the first 20 years of democracy.
Yeah, and it certainly is, and it's something to grow on though, because I mean surely those figures we can look at doubling those.
Oh yes, in 2-3 weeks time we're going to announce the international arrivals for last year. We're going to Soweto to do that at one of our tourism products there. And last year once again was an excellent year for us in South Africa. From many of our traditional markets we are growing double-digit growth. I had a delegation in Germany last week, 2 weeks ago. We went to the huge international trade show there, taking some of our products there. From that market, almost 15% growth. That's very important. But obviously in the new markets, our own continent, Africa, China and India, we are also growing very impressively. But Leanne, something that people are forgetting is South African people themselves. We want more South Africans to travel.
Yeah.
And that is why we brought back the Short Left campaign that is successful at the moment. And we want South Africans to come and see what we have.
Yeah, that's important. It is important to know what you've got on your doorstep because so many people don't. You know what's happening outside the borders, but not in your own borders. Let's talk GDP, let's talk numbers, and not necessarily over the last 5 years, but over the last 20 years when we look at the growth of what tourism has actually done for job creation in our economy. How has it contributed?
It's going very well. Just a week or two ago, Stats South Africa released the latest figures that we have in terms of job creation. Over 600,000 people in this country are relying on jobs from tourism, and that is growing. Year after year that is growing. And we look at arrival numbers. That's one part of the picture. We actually want to know, are we creating jobs for our people? And what is so impressive about what local communities are doing, if I can take this an example, the people in this area sat down and they said, what uniquely do we have? How can we use that to create jobs for our people? And they said, well, we have great guest houses, great restaurants, great hotels, and that is already creating jobs. But you had the insert on wine tourism, on wedding tourism.
Yeah.
And they said, you know what, we're an hour and a half from Cape Town, great area for weddings, great pictures. Let's focus on that as an additional product. And now over weekends, many weddings taking place. It's bringing millions and millions of rand into this area. So I would like to encourage local communities to think about that creatively. Is it art? Is it bird watching? Is it local cuisine? But they must have something in their area that they can share with other people.
Yeah. Well, it is important. It really is. And I mean, the amount of people that I'm seeing on Twitter that are reminiscing from their wedding day that had their wedding here is huge, because I suppose you have to tap into what it is that an area has, but it's also enhancing the skills of the people in the area, because that's very, very important, is just to continue it and to let the people in the communities and the smaller communities benefit. So how do we go about doing that?
I know this area quite well, and I know that historically many of our people, when they left school, maybe at standard 6, what it is nowadays, grade 8,
yeah.
They didn't complete their school, or even if they did, they became farm workers. Now, we must really create better quality jobs for our people. And that is where I think tourism and other sectors of the economy are so important. You had an interview earlier with Dr. Sido from the Tourism Enterprise Program. As government, we are investing, creating more jobs that our young people can actually enter. As government, we invested just over 110 million rand the last 3 years just training chefs. You know, they must be young unemployed people with matric, and we are making sure that when they leave that program, they have jobs. But you know, Leanne, coming to these rural areas, international tourists, they always thought Cape Town is great. Well, Cape Town is fantastic.
Yeah.
Durban, Johannesburg, Kruger. But nowadays, you can see they're moving out into the rural areas.
Yeah.
When you walk in this town, Tilbach, for instance, you will find Germans and Dutch tourists and sometimes Chinese and Indian tourists.
Yeah.
And that is happening in all the provinces. And we would like to encourage that trend.
All right. Minister, thank you for talking to us. Enjoy this beautiful part of the world for as long as you can. I know we get to come to these stunning places and we're always being sort of chatting here, but we never hear long enough, so we have to absorb it while we can. So, Minister, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Enjoy the day.
Yeah, we certainly will. All right. So that's it from